Every single time you hit send on a business report, you're not just sharing information. You're basically putting your professional reputation on the table. So let's dive into how we can make sure every single report you write actually builds your credibility instead of, tearing it down.
So, picture this. You've got a big report due tomorrow. Is it going to be the kind of thing that builds trust with your team or breaks it? Because that's what's at stake, right? This isn't just a piece of paper. It's a high-stakes test. The info inside is going to drive real decisions, and the people making them, they're counting on you to get it right.
Okay, so how do we make sure it builds trust? Well, we're going to walk through a simple roadmap together. First, we'll really nail down why your credibility is on the line. Then, we'll talk about gathering your evidence, asking the right kinds of questions, telling a story with your data, and finally, and this is a big one, presenting it all with total integrity. All right, let's jump into part one. We've got to start with this foundational idea. A report isn't just a summary of what you did last quarter. No way. It's a tool that people use to make big decisions. And because of that, it's a direct reflection of your professional judgment. Think of it this way. Every business report you write is a test. And here's the key takeaway. Your ability to do good research and report it properly, that's one of the most visible ways people measure your value at work. You provide solid, well-researched advice, and bam, you become the go-to expert. But if you get it wrong, that trust can disappear in a flash. So where does all this solid information come from? Well, it all starts with gathering your evidence. And really, there are two main paths you can take to build a rock-solid foundation for any report you're working on. First up, we've got what's called primary research. This is the stuff you collect yourself for your specific project. We're talking about surveys you design, interviews you conduct, maybe even focus groups you run. You're literally creating new information from scratch. And then there's the other path, secondary research. With this one, you're analyzing data that somebody else has already collected. Things like industry reports, white papers, academic articles, that kind of thing. You're essentially leveraging knowledge that's already out there. So you've got these two options, right? And each one has a pretty critical trade-off. Primary research is awesome because it's tailor-made for your exact problem, so it's super relevant. But secondary research is usually way faster and cheaper. The real skill is knowing when to use which one. And maybe even more importantly, knowing you have to be extra skeptical of data you didn't collect with your own two hands. Okay, let's zoom in on a really powerful tool for primary research, the survey. Now, here's the thing about surveys. The quality of the data you get out is 100% dependent on the quality of the questions you put in. It's that classic saying, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So, to get that amazing, high-quality data, your questions have to pass 4 simple tests. They need to be simple to answer, they've got to be non-leading or neutral, they have to be exhaustive and unambiguous, we'll get into what that means, and finally, they should only tackle one single idea at a time. Let's see what this looks like in the real world. Okay, take a look at this first example. On a scale of 1 to 4, what do those numbers even mean? Is 1 good? Is 4 good? Who knows? When a person has to guess, their answer becomes totally unreliable. And your data? Yeah, it's pretty much useless. This completely fails that simple-to-answer test. But check out the fix. It's so simple. Just by adding clear labels like not satisfied on one end and extremely satisfied on the other, all that confusion just vanishes. The person taking the survey doesn't have to guess anymore. They can just give you a real answer. That is how you get clean, trustworthy data. Okay. Rule number 2 is all about being neutral. A leading question is one that kind of pushes the person toward a specific answer. Like, imagine asking, to show support for our amazing new green initiative, would you recommend this venue? I mean, you're basically telling them what the right answer is. To get a real, honest opinion, you've got to strip out that bias and ask something neutral. Like, how likely are you to recommend this venue to others? See the difference? All right, next up, your answer choices themselves have to be perfect. First, they need to be exhaustive. That's just a fancy way of saying all possibilities are covered. For instance, if your age brackets stop at 64, what's a 70-year-old supposed to pick? And they also have to be unambiguous, which means the choices don't overlap. You can't have one option for 41 to 50 and the next for 50 to 64. What does the 50-year-old do? They're stuck? You've got to make it clear. Okay, so you've collected all this great data. Now what? Well, the next job is to bring it to life. And listen, this isn't just about plugging numbers into a program to make a chart. No, it's about finding and telling the story that's hiding inside those numbers. A really, really great chart checks 5 boxes. It needs a title that tells a story, not just as sales data. It needs a clear focal point to draw your eye in. The info itself has to be clean and simple. You should be able to get it in just a few seconds. And most important of all, it has to deliver one single, crystal clear takeaway message. Just look at the difference here. The chart on the left, staff and service ratings. I mean, it's just a bunch of squiggly lines, right? But look at the one on the right. It tells a story, improvement in staff and service ratings. It even has a little call out to show exactly when a new training initiative started, and it uses a darker line to highlight the impact. See? It went from just being data to being a narrative of success. It's the same story with this pie chart. That 3D effect on the left, it's not just distracting, it actually makes it harder to see the real proportions. But the chart on the right is flat, it's simple, and it has clear labels right on the slices. The main point, that a huge 66% of people didn't buy internet, just jumps right out at you. Now that is effective storytelling. And check out this bar chart. 2 tiny changes make a massive impact. On the left, the bars are all jumbled up. On the right, they're sorted, so it's instantly easy to compare them. But look closer at the scale. The chart on the right shows the full rating scale from 1 to 5. And that brings us to our final and I think most important point of all, integrity. All right, this is where it all comes together. Because honestly, all the amazing research and beautiful chart design in the world don't mean a thing if your final presentation isn't fair and honest. At the end of the day, this is all about building trust. Look, it is so tempting to just cherry pick the data, right? To only show the numbers that perfectly support your argument. But your ethical duty is to show the whole picture. Real integrity means you show all the relevant facts, especially the ones that make your neat, tidy story a little more complicated. And this is a textbook example of what I'm talking about. Look at that chart on the left. The difference between the bars looks massive. Why? Because the axis starts at 4.0. Now, technically, the numbers are accurate, but it is so misleading. The chart on the right, though, shows the full 1 to 5 scale. It gives you an honest, fair comparison. Yeah, there's still a difference, but now you can see it in its proper context. So here's the bottom line, everyone. Every single choice you make, from the way you word a question in a survey to how you set the scale on a chart, it all has consequences. These are not just little design choices, they actually shape the decisions people make. They shape how people see the situation, and ultimately, they shape the trust people put in you and your judgment. So the next time you sit down to work on a report, just remember, it is so much more than just data on a page. It's a direct reflection of your hard work, your honesty, and your credibility. And really, the only question left is, what story is your next report going to tell about you?